If I were to ask you who the most grailed 3-star servant in FGO is without you knowing prior, who would you guess? Many people would say it's Ku for his attachment to Fate Stay Night and other Fate properties, as well as his gameplay. Robin is another likely candidate for much the same reason. Many people know that Izo was the most grailed 3-star of the year that he was released, and so may believe that he is also the most ever as well. Even if we were to look at the girls, you would likely say someone like Medusa, Uriel, or Ushiwaka. But no, the most grailed 3-star unit ever is a character that many people seem to forget about or choose to actively ignore. Kiyohime. But you probably figured that out already because of the title of this video. Kiyohime is a bit of an anomaly in FGO. She has a pretty solid dual reception by the community at large. You either really like her or think that she's really annoying. In a sense, that is by design. Kiyohime shows up a lot in FGO, whether it's in events or the main story, and in each of these appearances, regardless of if she's a Chaldean servant, a stray servant, or a different servant entirely, she is consistently the exact same every single time. If Kiyohime shows up, you know exactly what to expect from her. She will be after the Master's attention and be trying to find a way to get the Master to dote on her. On paper, that sounds like a really boring and bland character, right? No matter where she is or what's happening, she's always the same? Kind of sounds like it sucks. So then why is it that she is so popular? Well, today I'm resurrecting this series to find out by putting Kiyohime under the Spyglass. Let's start with a spoiler warning for the FGO main story up to Trom, and event-wise up to the Dragon Palace event which took place on JP earlier this year. Let's look at Kiyohime's legend. Kiyohime was the daughter of a rich family that was often visited by a monk named Anin, who would stop by during pilgrimages. The young Kiyohime was infatuated with the handsome monk and asked him if they could be married once she was of age. The monk, not thinking much of it, agreed. When she reached marriageable age and Anin showed up as he normally did, Kiyohime asked for him to make good on his promise. The monk, not wanting to marry the girl, told her that he had to finish his pilgrimage first and then would return to take her with him on his way back. So, Kiyohime waited. However, Anin took a different route to avoid Kiyohime's home. She soon grew suspicious as to why he hadn't returned and soon learned of his deception. She chased after him in a rage for lying to her, but Anin managed to outrun her. Her rampage transformed her into a massive serpent who began to catch up to the monk. In a panic, he ran to the Dojo-ji temple and begged the monks there to hide him. They did so by having him climb into the bronze bell of the temple. However, Kiyohime could smell Anin and wrapped herself around the bell and scorched it with fire until it was white hot. In despair, she then slithered off to a nearby river where she drowned herself to death. When the monks checked the bell, they found the charred remains of the once handsome young monk. So, that's a fun story. It's a unique one in the way of yokai tales in that it can be read from two different angles. The first is taking the side of Anin, who was playing along with a child's fantasy, but believed it only to stay as one, just to find out that he was way in over his head and paid for his small jest with his life. Or you can take the side of Kiyohime, who was betrayed by a monk who chose to run from her rather than take responsibility or even apologize and deny the request. It is because of this dual nature to the story that Kiyohime can be summoned. It's what makes her an anti-hero. In the continuity of FGO's main story, we meet Kiyohime in Orleans, Solomon, Shimosa, and Trom. Because Solomon is essentially a unification chapter, I'm going to actually remove it from this list and instead put in the Dragon Palace event at the very end here. The reasoning for this is because between Orleans, Shimosa, Trom, and the Dragon Palace, Kiyohime is effectively 4 entirely different people. Orleans is our first meeting with Kiyohime. Here we meet her as herself, an anti-hero longing for the love of her life, Anin. We initially encounter her fighting with Liz, a different dragon girl. Throughout the Singularity, Kiyohime warms up to the Master of Chaldea due to the simple fact that they are honest, something that is a key component to her legend. She warms up to us so much in fact that she literally follows us to Chaldea. Actually, there's a little piece of non-canon lore from the Orleans manga that at the end of Orleans we make a pinky promise with Kiyohime, which is how she was able to come after us. Between Orleans and her next major story appearance, we do interact with Kiyohime a decent amount. She appears in several events such as Halloween and Onigashima, and even gets a summer variation. During this time, she seems to become more convinced that we are the reincarnation of Anin, and often plots various ways to garner our attention. These plots often have little in the way of care for others involved that aren't her and the Master, even willing to go to such lengths as stalking and killing others to make it happen. For this, she falls into the very niche subsection of character archetype that is a yandere. We'll touch a little bit on this later. When next we meet Kiyohime in the main story, it is in Shimosa, where she isn't Kiyohime, but rather Matsudaira no Kiyohime. A very important distinction should be made here. While it is never confirmed one way or the other, this is most likely not Kiyohime at all. Shimosa is a pretty weird story chapter because it was something like a prelude to the Lost Belts in a way that the other 3 Epic of Remnants are not. We simply see Matsudaira no Kiyohime as our own Kiyohime because it is the mind of the master of Chaldea filling in the blanks. If you will recall, there was an event where something similar was established and made Steno a very endearing character even though it wasn't her. Despite that, this version of Kiyohime seems to recognize us. In Shimosa, she claims to have lived her entire life in the castle and dreamed of a person who would sweep her off her feet and take her away. When she sees us for the very first time, she halts her royal procession and asks us to take her away like in her dreams. This is interrupted by Otama, who is also using a stand-in body from our memories. Throughout Shimosa, we learn more about this different Kiyohime. She has an affinity for snakes after saving a baby one in her garden, and now is able to talk with them. She wishes to see the world and is amazed at the stories that we and Musashi tell her, and she is genuinely caring for those around her, passing out when she learns that so many of her loyal guards died defending her. Much like in classic Kiyohime fashion though, she does remain infatuated with the main character. Whether this is because she truly believes her own dreams or because of our actions to protect her in the story, she seems to have fallen for the master despite being a different Kiyohime. There is another gap of time between Shimosa and the next major appearance in Trom, and once again we learn more about her through events and interludes. For one, we know that despite her seemingly cold demeanor towards others who aren't the master, she has a good relationship with the other yokai girls in Chaldea, though this is actually something mentioned all the way back in Extella. She also has a friendly rivalry with Liz, as both are snake-coated girls with obsessive personalities. Finally, while it is hard to say if they are actually friends, she is a part of the infamous stalker trio with Serenity and Raiko. She also appears to get along decently well with a number of other servants, with their only real caveat being that they must remain honest around her. When she next shows up in the main story, it is in Trom, where she has been summoned in a state where she wishes to overthrow proper human history. Here, she is originally a member of the reinstatement realm led by Constantine, as it seemed like a society free from lies and deception. As such, she lent her aid to Constantine and really got to show off her power in the fight against the Righteous Realm, single-handedly incinerating a forest that guarded the Righteous Realm's fortress. It was here that we met her for the first time in this singularity. Again, two things to note here. First, her heart didn't seem to be in it when fighting for Constantine, with many of her replies being shallow or lacking. Second, this Kiyohime is one without any of the memories of her Chaldea version, and a mind-altering spell that makes her want to destroy proper human history. In other words, this Kiyohime is a blank slate of a person, and should have no reason to care for the Master of Chaldea at all, which is why she attacks us shortly after our meeting. However, in the middle of our fight, something inside her seems to shift. She realizes that something about us is different. Not that we are a human, and not that we are on the side of proper human history, but rather something else. She recognizes us. Now, in certain contexts, that is absolutely terrifying, but in this one, it saves our lives. This pause gives us time to retreat with the assistance of Jufu, only to be confronted once again by Kiyohime at the gate proper. Here, an assassin tells her that the opposite gate has fallen and that they should attack, but we tell her that that is a lie. Kiyohime, being Kiyohime, then deserts the reinstatement realm, but refuses to join the righteous realm as well because we admitted that we lied to her too. She then leaves the battlefield of her own accord, and as she travels, assumedly tries to figure out who we are. We meet her once again in the Revenge Realm in the climactic fight of the Trom Singularity, where she aids us on the basis that we have remained honest with her. Her power is a welcome one, as it is enough to clear out an entire hall leading to the throne room. After our confrontation in the throne room with Kriemhild, Kiyohime confesses that she realizes who we are, telling us that she believes us to be her Anshin, before disappearing as well. After this, I am less knowledgeable about what happens, and I really don't want to trust the machine translations too much, so from here on out, take what I say with a grain of salt. Her next major appearance is in the Dragon Palace event where she is merged with the spirit of Otohime, with Otohime being the dominant identity. Despite this, once again, at just the sight of the Master of Chaldea, she becomes infatuated with us and declares her love. Once again, this is not the Kiyohime from Chaldea, it is an entirely new spirit who seems to recognize us and immediately can tell who we are. That is the amount about that event that I know with some level of confidence, so I'm not going to go into it too much. So there's a pretty obvious through line here between every Kiyohime manifestation that we see that I think adds to why she is so popular. No matter where we are, when we are, her state of mind, our appearance, or her identity, Kiyohime is always able to recognize us as something that she holds dear. A lot of people really like that, knowing that in every single universe and every single manifestation, Kiyohime will recognize you and love you. Despite her stalkerish ways and despite her apparent violent tendencies, at her core, Kiyohime just wants to love and be loved in return. This differs from similar characters who also occupy this space, like the other members of the Stalker trio for instance. Serenity has more of a morbid fascination with us due to her actually being able to touch us without us dying. It should be noted that she shares a similar relationship with Arash, whom she also finds fascinating. This isn't to say that Serenity has fake feelings for the Master, but rather that their route is different and that she herself doesn't really understand what it is that she wants. Raiko, on the other hand, wants to dote on us in a more paternal type of affection. She obsesses over the concept of being a good mother, and despite what Freud will tell you, these affections are not the same. There are so many different servants that are after the Master's affection, but Kiyohime is the only one to remain this consistent across all manifestations. This brings us to an important point. What is Anshin? Not who, but what. In Kiyohime's tale, we know that Anshin is a person. However, the Anshin that is in the story and the person that Kiyohime has imagined Anshin to be are completely different. Though Kiyohime phrases it that we are a reincarnation of her lost lover, I don't think this is actually the case. Rather, to Kiyohime, I believe that Anshin is a concept of her ideal partner. This then fits in with explaining how it is that she is able to recognize us. Regardless of where we go, we remain the same person. And regardless of who she is, or how she has been changed, she can always recognize us because we fit her ideal. Her Anshin. Her yandere tendencies are born from her own legend, but also from her own emotions. Put yourself into her shoes. If you could tell at a glance that a person actually fit your exact type, knowing it to be true on an instinctual level, and there being a glint of hope that you could have the romance that you were robbed of in your life, would you not do everything in your power to try and grab it? Despite her static nature as a character, Kiyohime is one that we can always count on. We know that despite everything, it will always be her. I think that it is for this reason that she is so popular, a character that we can always count on being herself across all of time. That's our Dragon Girl, that's our Kiyohime. Thanks for watching, guys. Shout out to the first guy who typed she's 12 as if that has anything to do with this video. If it wasn't obvious, I like this character. She's really fun, and after clearing Trom, I just kinda wanted to talk about her. For now though, guys, if you'd like to support me directly, check out the Patreon. You can also check out the Discord, Twitch, Twitter, and the podcast. Do all the YouTube stuff, but for now, guys, keep your chin up. Peace.